Our Hen House. This is Jasmine Singer.
And this is Marianne Sullivan.
And this week, Marianne will be speaking with Alexandra Paul and Alicia Santurio about their recent acquittal of stealing 2 chickens, Ethan and Jax, in the Foster Farms Right to Rescue case. You are not going to want to miss this interview. What a powerhouse group you've got there.
Yeah, this was great. And I'm so excited we were able to get them on the show fairly quickly after their acquittal in that case. I mean, I kind of can't believe what's going on with these cases, that there have now been 2 of them, full acquittals. Like something is really in the air. These are 2 really amazing, amazing women who, put their freedom on the line. And I felt so privileged to be able to have this conversation with them.
Oh, that's so great. I love it. I'm so excited for our listeners that they get to hear it too. So before I say this next thing, I just want to confirm to our listeners that this is indeed our hen house. There. Now that I've said that, let me say we have some good news to report.
What?
So it is not backwards day. And also the interview is good news. I love this episode. So we wanted to talk about, what's going on at the New York Times, because when we were chatting about what to chat about today, 3 articles came to mind for us, all from the Times, all positive. What?
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So the New York Times, this one, this was so cool. You found this, and we're going to put all of these in the show notes, and you have to click on this just to see these photos. It's called When the Kitten Lady Met the Cat Photographer, which, by the way, sounds like a children's book. Maybe they should turn it into a children's book.
Oh, I'm sure they will. They seem like exactly the type who will.
Yeah.
And it'll have beautiful, beautiful pictures. This is a wedding article. The New York Times does these featured weddings from time to time. And all right, this is absolutely beautiful couple. They're animal rescue. Well, she's an animal rescuer. She's known as the Kitten Lady. Apparently, she has a big following on Instagram. And she gives advice on not just stray cats, but a lot on baby kittens. And, when people come into the possession of kittens when they're too small to do anything and they have to feed them. And she knows all about that. And she's been very successful on Instagram. And she was getting married to this guy, Andrew Martilla, who's known as the cat photographer. That's what he does. He photographs cats. He started off by apparently with this book, Shop Cats, which I actually have.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which is a really good book. He started out like he was in college and he just started taking pictures and people really liked them. So one thing led to another. And he decided to take 3 months out and say, all right, let me see if I can do something. And he got a book published. So now he's this really successful cat photographer. She's this partially with his help because they've been together for a long time. She took 3 months out and said, all right, let me see if I can just make a go of this with the kittens because that's what I really want to do. And she was successful. So they have this idyllic life where they're all about rescuing cats. So it's a charming story. They're very charming. They're very beautiful. Like there's all pictures of cats. It's like, what more do you want? What more do you want? They're vegan. Mm-hmm. They had their wedding at a sanctuary.
Yeah, you know what? We need to get them on our hen house.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Also, this kitten, like this kitten in that little basket. Oh, there's 2 little kittens. Oh my God.
I think there were 5, actually. They're really small.
Yeah, in the photo I'm looking at, like little kittens are so cute and absolutely terrify me, just completely.
Oh, I know. They're so tiny and delicate. And that was like her wedding. I think her wedding gift to him, these 5 kittens that they're now going to have to nurse.
Yeah.
And there's pictures of goats. There's pictures of pigs. There's pictures of everybody, all about the vegan meal. And they did a watermelon toss where they, instead of throwing a bouquet, they threw a watermelon into the pig corral.
Oh my God, I love that.
The pigs. They had separated out one place where the animals couldn't go, and that was where the buffet table, and a large sheep named Joey actually managed to get in, and they had to run around chasing. The whole story is so charming, so delightful, so vegan. It's like the New York Times finally figured out that vegans and animal rescuers are cool.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like it's a light article, but I think it's really meaningful, really meaningful.
By the way, you just made me think of something. I am listening to an audiobook and I try and listen to just dumb audiobooks. I'm listening to a young adult book, and it's called The Art of Starving by Sam J. Miller. And the kid in it has some mental issues going on, and he winds up like sort of in the hospital for something, and he's in this sort of delirious state. And in this delirious state, he imagines going to the local slaughterhouse where his mother works and freeing all the pigs and having them destroy everyone who has ever hurt him. And this is like a very long section of the book where the pigs help him retaliate. And like, it was just so fascinating to me that I absolutely was not reading it for any animal rights reason. And then suddenly he had pretty much the same fantasy as me. So
we're slipping into the zeitgeist.
Definitely. So this next article, I absolutely love. And it's called An Eagle Who Adopted a Rock Becomes a Real Dad. Murphy, a bald eagle at a bird sanctuary in Valley Park, Missouri, had been incubating a rock, and his keepers did not have the heart to separate them. He seemed ready when an eaglet needed a dad. This is the sweetest story.
And another really good thing about it is it's not at all told tongue-in-cheek like so many animal stories frequently are. Apparently, it's fairly both male and female eagles do sit on incubating eggs. So it's not that unusual that as a bachelor, he was trying to incubate an egg. But it is unusual that it wasn't an egg, it was a rock. And just something so touching, It's like they got this eaglet who had, fallen out of a nest and during a storm and couldn't be restored to his nest. And they're going to try to restore this eaglet to the wild, I think. But they just decided that maybe they would give Murphy the chance to be his foster parent. And he'd never taken care of anything other than a rock before, but he's doing a really good job. Not perfect, but they said for a first-time father, he's doing pretty well. And so far, it's really working. And the eaglet is doing well. And
that's so cute.
Murphy seems to be happy, and he's caring for him. And he's, well, I won't tell you what the food was because, of course, it's unfortunate. But they gave the eaglet some food that was cut up. And then they gave Murphy some food in a big hunk. It was a fish. Why am I trying to be coy about it? And Murphy actually cut it up and fed it to the eaglet. It's like, this story makes me want to cry. Of course, at some point, the eaglet's going to learn to fly, and Murphy isn't because his wings is permanently damaged and he's not going to be able to fly. So I'm already feeling sad about that. I like to make it not too happy.
No, that's good.
It's kind of my nature.
We couldn't have that, could we? We actually live not too far from a wild bird sanctuary, and it totally makes you sad because these are
really sad.
They're predator birds who cannot be put back into the wild. They have it as good as they could possibly have it, given...
I guess. I don't know. That place depresses me.
Well, okay. Anyway, so here's another story, which I know already that you're going to spin this into something sad too, but there is something good about it and something very annoying. So we talked about the goat last week, and the New York Times has an opinion piece by Nicholas Kristof. There's the annoying part, and it's called What a Girl's Goat Teaches Us About Our Food. And it's just like this, the column is really lovely. And I'll just read you the end. It's a total spoiler alert, but whatever. You don't care. It's not like I'm spoiling for you, like who wins The Voice, which, by the way, if you watch The Voice, don't follow them on Instagram because it will be a ruiner. Okay.
You digress.
I digress, but me and The Voice go way back. Okay, so the end of this article, future generations may look back at our age and wonder in astonishment at how we pamper our dogs yet brutalize farm animals. By seeing her beloved cedar as more than cuts of meat, E may have been ahead of her time. E is the girl. Yeah, I mean, she sure is. And it's a great piece. Nicholas Kristof gets a lot of, attention, and he's not vegan. That's the annoying part. Like, dude.
He does say he stopped eating meat. I think he used to eat meat. So that's kind of big.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's a start.
I think that's really big.
Nicholas, call me. I'll hook you up with a free copy of Fabulous Vegan, and then you'll do it right. You'll do it right.
I actually am planning on covering a story on rising anxieties, which is about the industry's reaction to this article, which is interesting. And I'm hoping, just fingers crossed, don't get mad at me if I don't pull it off, but I'm hoping to get the lawyer in this case on my animal law podcast for this month. Yeah.
Wow.
This case is big.
Yeah.
I mean, this is getting so much press, so much important press, and it's just heartbreaking. This poor little girl, this poor goat, and then this poor little girl. The thing that I find annoying about this article, I mean, a lot of it is good, but like he always has to go back to the fact that he lived on a farm, and he can't like betray his childhood or something, so he has to basically say it was fine. And the part that I found particularly annoying is this quote: 4-H and FFA are, incidentally, two of the best youth organizations in America. Really, Nicholas, just go one way or the other. Like, he always has to backtrack and act like the whole thing isn't horrible, and it is. But, all in all, I'm pretty glad this article was in there.
Yeah, me too. Well, there's a lot of good stuff going on out there in the media in terms of coverage of animal rights issues. I've seen other things too. And like you said, regarding the book I'm listening to, because I don't know how to read anymore with words in front of me, it is slipping into the zeitgeist more and more than it used to be. So
totally. No, I think something's going on. I really do.
Well, I think if something is going on, Alexandra would know about it, because Alexandra is very plugged in, and I'm super excited to hear her and Alicia on the podcast. Alexandra Paul is a vegan animal rights activist who is also a well-known actress, most famous for playing Lieutenant Stephanie Holden on the TV show Baywatch from 1992 to 1997. She has also appeared on Melrose Place, and her films include Paper Dolls, Dragnet, Above and Beyond, and A Beer Tale. She is also the co-host of the weekly podcast Switch for Good. Alicia Santurio is a full-time animal rights activist and a fellow with Direct Action Everywhere. She works with DXE. She works with their legal team as a paralegal/legal aid, and is a lead investigator, and also has a background in animal care. They will be joining Marianne right after this. If you like what you're listening to, and I hope you do, then please consider taking a minute out of your day today to leave us a friendly review. You can do it on Apple Podcasts, or on Spotify, or Stitcher, or on Facebook, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this. The more we get out there, the more our henhouse will be in front of people's eyeballs when they're putting in search terms in their podcasts, and the more we could join forces together to elevate the voices of the animals and change the world for them. So thank you so much in advance for leaving us a friendly review. Welcome to our hen house, Alicia and Alexandra. I'm so excited.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. We're happy to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. You are the heroines of the moment, and I have so many questions for you. I imagine most of our listeners are somewhat familiar with, but I want to get into some detail. And just by going through the events of the day of the rescue, kind of step by step, can you just take us through it?
Sure. There's not too much that happened earlier in the day. I knew that there was going to be a protest at the slaughterhouse, so I assumed there might be an opportunity to rescue chickens from a truck. And we got to the slaughterhouse. It was pretty early in the morning, I believe. So really, it was just getting in the car, and we parked like on a side street where we could see if trucks were coming in and that they were going to stop. And actually, a truck finally arrived, and then a police car drove up. And I was like, oh no, the cops are here. We won't be able to rescue anyone. But then I was like, oh, wait, no, they're going to go to the protest. They're going to go to that big U-Haul and the people locking down. So they're going to be distracted. They're not even going to see us. And so we just pulled up behind the transport truck, opened the cage, and immediately saw Jax and Ethan in really bad shape. And so we pulled them from the cage and ran back to the car and rushed back to the Airbnb as quick as we could to give them a health check and some meds. And
So you mentioned that they were in really bad shape, and that's what you were looking for, right? I mean, all of these chickens were headed for certain death, so all of them, in our minds, were certainly eligible for rescue. But you were really looking for chickens who were ill. Is that right? And how would you know?
This is Alexandra. This is an open rescue. In an open rescue, we rescue the animals who need us most, who are those who are sick. And of course, I agree with you, Marianne. They all need us. But the policy of open rescue is to rescue sick animals. And Alicia has a lot of experience with chickens. And so she helped me know the signs of a sick chicken. And she can explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think to most people, it would have been pretty obvious, even if you don't know chickens that well, that they were in bad shape. Like Ethan, for example, his legs were splayed out to the sides, which isn't like a natural position. It's very obvious that there's something wrong. Their combs were much paler than the others. And even Jack's too, when Alexandra went into the cage, he didn't move away from her. He was completely immobile. So you could tell there was something wrong with them, and they definitely needed us.
It wasn't that hard to find chickens who were sick, was it?
No. In fact, Alicia, I think you said this in your testimony, but I quote you anyway, because one of the criticisms, if you watch the video, is how quickly Alicia opens the cage and we both pull out chickens. And so that was one of the prosecution's arguments, that how could we possibly know these chickens are sick? And Alicia made the very excellent point, is that a better question is, why was it so easy to pick out a sick chicken on a trailer like that? And that should be the question that the courts are looking at, but it's not, unfortunately, not yet, but it will be, we feel, with enough of cases like ours. So that's the real question, because there were 5,000 chickens on that truck. We suspect that the huge majority, if not all, were sick.
Wow. It's just so awful. So how much planning went into this rescue? Was it meticulously planned, or did you just get up in the morning and say, okay, let's do this?
It was planned. Everything we do, we likely plan and think out what we're doing. But I've spent a lot of time at slaughterhouses and a lot of time around transport trucks. So it's a basic action plan.
We always have to plan, because we're rescuing 2 chickens and we need to have a place for them to live. And unfortunately, there's so many animals in need, but not very many sanctuaries. So we had to know where they were going to be going afterwards. We had to know the vets to whom we would take them afterwards. We had to have a plan. But this was a very simple rescue. And it was just very ironic that it went to court at all. Alicia and I did not expect to even get a notice from the company about this rescue, even though it was online within an hour of the rescue. We documented it, as we do all our open rescues. It's part of the open part of open rescue. But usually the factory farms and the animal ag companies, they don't want to bring attention to what goes on behind closed doors. So they don't bring charges usually. And if they do bring charges, they will often drop them if there's any pushback at all.
That's really interesting. I hadn't realized that. And so obviously there have been DXE cases coming to trial, like boom, 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 and there will be more coming to trial, boom, 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 in the future. Is that partially as a result of a switch in strategy by the industry, that they did start responding in a different way? They said, we've got to do something about this, so we're going to start calling on these DAs and bringing charges?
It's all speculative, but I think so. I think they feel like they have to do something to us. But the thing that I think they're not counting on is that when you get in front of your peers and you tell regular people these horrors about what's going on to animals in these places like foster farms, like Smithfield, most people are going to side with the activists. People don't want to see animals hurt. Even if people eat animals, most people don't like animal cruelty. And so I think it's trying to fight back, but they don't realize that we're in the right and most people are going to side with us. I think they just aren't counting on how much people love animals. And when we shine a light on just how horrible it is and how most people do side with you. And
yeah, I think it's possible they're starting to wake up to the fact that their strategy is not a good one. But I hadn't realized that it really was a switch on the part of the industry. Before we get to trial, and obviously I want to go into that in detail, just tell me about I know that one of them didn't make it, but tell us about that part of that day. Where did you bring the chickens and what happened to them and when were you arrested? Well, that wasn't that day, but when did you find out that there were going to be charges laid and respond to that?
Well, so after the rescue, which was in the morning of September 28th, 2021, we took them, Ethan and Jax, to where we were staying near the slaughterhouse in Livingston, California. And immediately, Alicia and another DXE activist who also has a sanctuary and has a lot of chicken knowledge like Alicia does, gave them meds. And I photographed that part to document because we are very open about every step of the way in terms of our rescues. And then Alicia, you carry on because I actually left the next morning and Alicia had more of a hand in what happened with the chickens.
So the next morning they went to like a safe house where Celeste was their caregiver. I think they stayed there for a week or so. And then Jax went to his forever home. And in that period of time, Ethan unfortunately passed away. So I went and I took Ethan's body to UC Davis to get a necropsy done so we could learn why did he die and what exactly happened that caused his death.
And that was a really smart move legally on Alicia's part, even though we had no idea we were going to be charged. We got the notice in the mail. Was it a year later or was it 9 months later?
I thought it was in April.
Okay, so it was about, 6 months later, we got a notice in the mail saying that we were going to be charged with petty theft. And I just looked at it and went, okay. And I put it away because I figured they're going to drop the charges. And that was that. And then they didn't. And just to say that now activists, when they do something that is considered extra legal, not outside what typically would be considered legal by the average person, they really have to think ahead and think, okay, if I'm going to court, what do I need to do? And a lot of the strategies that really helped us were the necropsy was very damning because it showed how sick Ethan was. And by extension, probably all those birds in that truck, since they were all from the same flock and had lived together their entire 6 weeks. And the fact that he was so sick after being just 6 weeks old, I think also appalled the jury. And there's no veterinary care, anything. And so that was a very important part. And I thank Alicia very much, even though Alicia and I both knew that the outcome of the trial was less important than actually going to trial. It still does help that we did win the trial.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That was a lot to do with Alicia.
Absolutely. Everybody loves a winner. But it's really true. The fact winning was so much better than losing. It really was.
Although with losing, Marianne, and you probably know this, and I've learned this, is that we could have appealed the decision of the judge not to let us use, the judge did not let us use the necessity defense.
Like the minute I heard that, I was so shocked. And we're going to get into that for people who don't know what we're talking about yet. But I was so shocked that in California that defense was not being permitted. And I did think, well, I really, really want them to get acquitted, but I'll be really mad if this can't get appealed because now it's out there as precedent. But let me just, all right. So you were arrested and then before trial.
Well, we weren't arrested. We were just we were given,
You were given a summons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Told to come to court. So let's talk about the trial. And yes, the defense, and we've talked about this a bit before on some episodes, but people may not be that familiar with it. And you were planning on bringing what's called a necessity defense or a lesser of two evils defense, it's sometimes called. And can you just describe what that is and what happened in court when you tried to propose it and what you were planning on arguing and you sort of had the rug pulled out from under you when the court said no?
So the necessity defense is when you, just in real simple terms, when you commit a crime, but the crime you're committing is a lesser charge or less harm than what you're trying to prevent. So a good example of this is the dog in a hot car. You can break someone's window to save that dog because breaking the window is a lesser harm than the dog dying in the hot car. So we wanted to use that necessity defense and say that these animals, yes, maybe we opened up Foster Farms' property, their truck, and we took their property, but it was to give them emergency medical care because they were in such bad shape that we were preventing a greater harm. But the interesting thing is we were allowed the mistake of law defense. And that's where Alexandra and I have read a legal opinion by a well-respected legal scholar, Hadar Avram, where she says that the necessity defense should be applied to animals because animals have protections under the law. And so that shows that they're not just things, that they are someone. And so when the necessity defense says you can prevent a greater harm from someone, that animals should be included in that. And Alexandra and I totally believe that is true and that we were doing the legal and right thing. So because we were allowed to use this mistake of law defense that was based on the necessity defense legal opinion, we kind of were able to talk about certain things that we would have talked about if we had the necessity defense. Hopefully that all made sense.
No, it made sense to me. It makes total sense to me. You kind of got it in the back door. So you were able to bring essentially a necessity defense because you were able to say, we were mistakenly told that we had a necessity defense. So, and under California law, you were allowed to say that because a lawyer told us this, we can now argue it. But it does create a problem for future cases that the judge made this ruling that a necessity defense. I think if I understand correctly, I was trying to follow everything that happened at the trial, but the ruling was that it couldn't apply to a crime committed against an animal. Well, what would have been a crime committed against an animal, like if the animal was the victim. That's just the silliest. I've never heard anybody say that. It's a crazy rationale. Like if the house next to me is on fire and their dog is in the window, I'd be convicted of trespassing if I ran in to save their dog.
Well, his logic was that was another, or the prosecutor brought it up. And yes, I totally agree with you, because if a company can have personhood, if a corporation can have personhood, why can't a sentient being have personhood? A sentient being whom, as Alicia said, we have anti-cruelty laws against them. So they are covered in, as she used on the stand, I think you did, Alicia. Sometimes I get mixed up what we said on the stand and not. But is it, a sweatshirt doesn't have legal protection ever, but a dog or a cat, they do have some, and chickens do have some, very few, but they do have some, and that should allow them some standing under the law. And I too was shocked that someone did not cover an animal. But the first judge, this was a 9-day trial, which is a long time for a misdemeanor petty theft. And the jury was pretty darn pissed off when they heard it was about 2 chickens. They're like, what are you doing, wasting our time? And it's interesting because they were actually more angry at Foster Farms for bringing the case against these 2 women who they had no idea who they were yet or why they'd done it, but they were pretty upset, and the courts for wasting court resources. But so the first judge did say, yes, I do think your argument is valid, and please come back on Friday to argue it more. But he basically allowed it in, which we were just over the moon about that. Unfortunately, what happened was that judge then miraculously was moved to got busy the next week, and we were assigned a second judge who got COVID. So we were assigned a third judge, a judge whom we actually were happy to be assigned to, but were disappointed that he did not see animals as someone. And the thought is that it just opens a whole can, if I were to use a metaphor, can of worms.
I've been known to use that metaphor myself. I don't know whether those worms are unhappy to be in that can. It's hard to know.
But yes, so we were unable to use the necessity defense. And I hope that one day, I think it makes it harder for us, Alicia and I, to go. We won't be able to use mistake of law again because maybe, who knows? We have such brilliant lawyers. I'm sure they can get us off on.
Well, you can always go to another state. Come to New York. We have a statute laying out the necessity defense, so it's very clear.
Okay,
it's very clear.
And has it been tested?
Not in this context, no.
Oh my God, what's going on, New York activists? Where the hell are you? Get out there. Okay, well, Alicia and I will be happy to come out and test it. That's for sure.
You mentioned that in the beginning of the trial, some of the jurors were frustrated. And I had thought it was with you, but I'm glad to hear it was with Foster Farms, that all this time was going to be spent on 2 chickens. Did you find that kind of attitude shifted as the trial went on? Like, can you talk a little bit about what happened with the jury as these, was it 9 days that you said passed? Did they become more engaged in the issues?
I think most certainly they did. They all seemed very intrigued too. or most of them did, when they heard it was about 2 chickens. And then when, oh gosh, I'm going to pronounce it wrong. How do you pronounce it? The jury selection. You pronounce it.
Oh, voir dire.
Voir dire. Okay. So when our attorneys started asking them questions during that process, they seemed to be getting like really interested, like, oh, wait, there's a video of this? Oh, they shot the video and they published the video? I thought from that moment, their minds started changing a little bit and they started thinking like, this might be an interesting case. I kind of want to find out what this is all about now.
Interesting.
That's just my opinion. I don't know, Alexandra, if you agree or not.
I agree completely, Alicia. And I also think that the judge, who in the beginning, a lot of the judges and the prosecutor, everyone started saying, this is just a petty theft case. They tried to keep saying, like they were trying to convince us. And we're knowing, nope, it's not a petty theft case. Sorry, it's bigger than that for us. But by the end of the trial, Judge Paul Lowe, who was our judge, when he thanked the jurors and let them go, he said, I hope that he acknowledged their frustration in the beginning. And he said, I hope you see that this was not just a petty theft case. It was about important principles. And Alicia and I were really happy to have him say that because he was definitely in the beginning saying, this is just a misdemeanor petty theft case. Let's not get complicated.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a judge's, would not want to get caught up in somebody else's cause. And it's very exciting to hear that he kind of did. And I guess the jurors did as well. Like, what were your plans? I mean, as this was going on, you didn't know that the outcome was going to be so positive. So when did you find out that you might be imprisoned, and what were your plans for managing that?
With the summons in April of 2022, it's easy to look up and see what a petty theft charge has up to 6 months in jail. We didn't know if we were sentenced because there's a new district attorney in Merced County, which is the heart of animal ag in California. She has a new policy to, crack down on,
tough on ag crime or something?
Yeah, that's right. Tough on ag crimes, which means us, of course, not the factory farms or slaughterhouses.
What other ag crime is there?
Yeah. So we thought that they might use us as an example.
Yeah, I think that's very possible.
But at the same time, it was clear that they didn't take us seriously. And the prosecutor whom they assigned the case did not do a lot of work, only had a couple witnesses to bring up, while we had 7 that we wanted to bring up, all women, by the way, because women are badass. Then on the second day of trial, in came a second prosecutor who only does felonies. So obviously the county saw, the DA's office saw, Alicia and Alexandra are represented by 3 lawyers, 4 assistant lawyers, and about 50 people in the courtroom. We better up our game. And so they did, but not enough, because our lawyers, Wayne Shung, Chris Caraway, and Kevin Little, were passionate. And when you add passion and a real belief in a moral belief, then you really can't beat that when it comes to just run-of-the-mill prosecutions.
Yeah, that's for sure. But what were your thoughts about, well, if this does go wrong? Because, obviously it could have. This was not a slam dunk kind of case. You didn't go in there thinking, well, we're going to be fine. You couldn't have. So what did you think about the prospect of going to jail?
For me, I've said this many times, it's always my senior dog. He's always been very clingy. And so I try to not be away from him that much. So I was really nervous about getting the 6 months in jail just because it's just too long to be away from him, especially at this stage of his life. But I figured, we're going to give it a try. Hopefully we don't get the maximum. And then as far as preparing for jail, I know DXE would put money on our books. Wayne said he would write us a letter every day. And so we'd have support on that end. But I don't know, Alexandra, how did you prepare for the prospect of going to jail?
I've had experience with the court systems, and I know they tell you the worst, and then 60 days would have been bad optics for them. And I didn't expect to get 60 days. I didn't expect to win either. And even our lawyers at the end, Chris Caraway, what does he have us at? 10% winning or something?
Yeah. I think he went up to 30, and he said for him, that's major.
But to me, the outcome was never an issue. It was not. Alicia and I were always clear that we were just human proxies for these two chickens who had no right in court. So what happened to us was not nearly as important as the fact that at least their story was being heard. And that was the most important thing. And if we were sent to jail, then I know there would have been a positive outcome for the movement, or there would have been something positive. And all in all, we turned down 5 plea deals, Alicia and I. They offered us plea deals, which involved no jail time, small sums under $45. I think there was very small sums and under 50 hours of community service, something like that. But we turned those down. And I, for one, knew that whatever happened to me was a lot better than what happens to the chickens every day. So it was really, I didn't even think about it. Didn't have any plans for jail. I expected to be home. I guess I just thought it was really bad optics if they did send us to jail, even if we lost, and that at most it might be 5 days is what I expected.
Yeah, I just think, but I don't know whether you know of this, but there was a case many years ago in New York, right around where I live, with a defendant, Adam Durand, and he was kind of the first. Like, they went into a Wegmans battery farm, took out some chickens, filmed the whole thing, put it up, and he got sentenced to a year with no record whatsoever. So, you know, it's a little scary. I think I was more scared for you than you were.
Oh, I didn't know about Adam until Wayne told us during the trial, but I think things have changed about animals.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's so much more because of open rescues and the documentation of animal rescuers like Alicia and I and Adam. People know what's going on behind these slaughterhouse doors. So there's less empathy for slaughterhouses. They know they're not small family farms. So it's a different situation. I really think, I can't imagine this, but even if it had been 6 months, it would have been okay with me. We would have figured it out.
I guess you would have had to. So speaking of which, of the attention and the way things have changed, what about the press? Were you pleased with the attention from the press that you got? Did you think it deserved more? Were you both pleased and thought it deserved more? How did you feel about the press that you got?
Well, I mean, luckily, because Alexandra has been in, Baywatch, and then she's been an actress.
It helps to go in being famous.
Yeah, it helped us so much, because I don't think either one of us was expecting this much press. Also, going into the trial, we're like, it's just a misdemeanor trial. Is it going to be good for the movement? Like, neither one of us wanted to take too many resources from the organization or the movement if the trial wasn't worthwhile. So the press we got, at least for me, I was blown away by it. And I think we did really, really well on that end. Even that New York Times opinion piece that came out before trial.
That was amazing.
Right?
Farhad Manjoo, was that piece? Yeah.
Yeah, I told Alexandra, like, regardless of what happens with trial, like, we've already won. We got this amazing New York Times opinion piece. That's always the goal of these trials, to raise awareness. And so I think guilty, not guilty, like, we did our job. And then there was just so much more press after that. And then we won, which was great.
Yeah, really, really perfect. Although I do think it's time for somebody at a big news outlet, the New York Times or whatever, to start doing a deep dive into what's going on here. Why are people being acquitted of things that the industry seems to think are obvious crimes? I mean, what's going on here and what is happening? I think it's a perfect opportunity for that kind of coverage. But yeah, I thought the press was substantial. Did anything happen at trial that really surprised you, or did it kind of go according to the way you thought it would?
Being found not guilty.
Yeah, exactly. I'd never been on trial before. I'd been to other people's trials, but it's a fascinating process. And I think I really appreciated our lawyers always checking in with us to find out, okay, this is their strategy. Or is it okay with Alicia and me that they move forward in that vein? I thought we also had the value defense. So we put forth, I think it was 4 defenses, Alicia. I didn't realize this. Everything is discussed. Everything is divulged. And Marianne, you know this, but everything, whoever we're going to put on the stand, we tell them. There's no surprises, so everyone can do their homework, and may the best arguments win. And so we had value, which is one of the arguments was that the chickens were of no value to foster farms because they were so sick. And Alicia's necropsy proved that, as well as the video that we had of the birds after we rescued them. It was interesting that we thought was going to be probably our best argument, and it actually didn't really factor nearly as much into the jury's decision. We have spoken to 3 jurors since then, and it seemed that it was mostly the fact that we were so open. We admitted that we did it. When asked if we would have returned the chickens, we said no. We were extremely open with everything, and that really helped our case. And that's something I would definitely advise for animal rights activists going forward, is that you're open, even if you think it's like, oh no, they're not going to like that. If you're open up front with it and honest and you explain why, they understand.
Yeah. Or they learn. I mean, some people have never heard people talk about animals in that way before. Well, I mean, we're so used to hearing them disdained and just treated as nothing, especially chickens, that just experience someone talking seriously about them and feeling seriously about them, I'm sure had a huge impact on the jury.
We made sure to name them and we used their names. Whereas the prosecution had a document where they said, the chicken labeled as Ethan, because they were so trying not to fall into our language. Yeah, we insisted on labeling. We called them by their gender, not it. We told personal stories of our relationship with chickens, why they have personalities. Alicia told a beautiful story. She's had so much experience with them. And I told a story of a rescue that I did of chickens several years ago, so that they understood that we really did believe what we were doing. It was not what the prosecution tried to paint and repeated about 10 times, an activist stunt. That was not what we were doing. We were trying to save lives.
Right. They always seem to miss the fact that in any context, whenever the industry is talking about animal activists, they seem to miss the fact that we're actually motivated by the fact that we actually care about animals. They're always looking for some other reason we're doing this. What other possible reason could there be to do any of this? Like, you'd have to be crazy.
And
you didn't actually care.
Yeah, the prosecution and the whole case, that was more of a publicity stunt. We we got so much more publicity off of the case that they're charging us with than even the rescue. It's so silly. It's like, you all are giving us a lot of press opportunities here.
That's a dilemma that these corporations are going to have to deal with going forward.
Yeah, I don't know what their next step is.
Marianne, I think I do know what their next step is, and it's not pretty. I think it's restitution. I think they're going to start demanding lots of restitution money from activists for the quote unquote loss of money from trade or whatever. I think that's going to be there. That's my assumption for their next step.
Well, we'll have to see, and we'll just have to be ready. What about this DA? You had mentioned her, and she's made some statements after the trial. What's going on with her? Do you think that this is a real cause for her?
I think she's in an animal county. I mean, maybe she has a background. Who knows? I don't know who her parents are, if she grew up on a dairy farm or what, or was in 4-H. But it is like big business in Merced County. There's farms everywhere, or factory farms. So I think to get elected DA, you want to run on a platform of, I'm going to be tough on ag crime, because that's who most of your constituents are. Farmers, they work at farms, or ranchers, things like that. So, but I don't know much about her. It's just slightly frustrating though, because we've reported the animal cruelty to the DA and the sheriff, animal control, all in Merced County, and we've re-reported it after trial. Now that it's like, you all know about this animal cruelty, and then still nothing's happening. So it's just so disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see how something could happen. If they were going to address animal cruelty, they'd have to shut down the industry. We've gone so far into this dark hole that they don't know how to get out of it, I think. All right. So you talked a little bit about what the next steps of the industry is. What about next steps for DXE? Whether it was planned or it sort of happened organically, this really all came together at the same. All of these trials are happening very close together, and the whole theory of open rescue and the whole use of the necessity defense, clearly a thought out theory of change, which, Wade is always talking in those kinds of terms. Either you personally or for DXE, what do you see next as the next steps? More of these open rescues or new ideas, or what for you personally?
Well, coming up soon, we have the Animal Liberation Conference. It's June 9th through the 14th. So that'll be a good opportunity to hear from people and trainings. There'll be actions and where these ideas will probably be discussed. But I think we're always going to be doing open rescue because telling the stories of these individuals, it's so powerful. It's such a powerful tool in really showing what's happening behind closed doors is very important. But I think as an organization, Direct Action Everywhere, like we always want to grow and get better. One of our values is doing our homework. Like we just really pride ourselves in doing a lot of research and really thinking things out and trying to be as strategic as we can. So I don't know. I'm sure there will be new things, but I'm not sure.
I'm going to keep doing investigations and open rescues. My sister-in-law is a paralegal. She works with animal nonprofits, but she's a paralegal. So she does a lot of research and she does the political lobbying and things like that. And she told me she watched the trial from beginning to end because she's a legal nerd. And she said, Alexandra, I didn't really think much of open rescue before, and I didn't really understand why you were so involved in it. But after seeing the trial, I do understand the power of it. And I think it's huge. And I was really moved by that she said that and heartened that our trial had an impact on her like that. I do think we need to continue doing these kind of grassroots open rescues all over the world and shedding light on what goes on behind closed doors in a really open, transparent way and challenging these systems in courts. And yes, there will be people who will have to pay the price, but we need to continue to fight in the courts, as well as in the courts of public opinion and politically, all sorts. But the courts, it's so important. I do think these investigations and these open rescues are a really good platform for that, especially if we can use the necessity defense. One thing, I was thrilled, of course, that we were able to go to court and that we got this outcome. But the outcome was very much based on human values. Like, okay, value. What is this chicken valued at? Is it worth it to the company? That was one of the defenses that we had. And then mistake of law was based on Alicia and I and what we thought about the law. Not once was actual Jackson, Ethan. So that's the next step for court cases. These are great and they're laying the groundwork and they're opening the doors, but we need to get rights for chickens, not just for activists, for chickens to have a better life. And I would like to see, laws protect them instead of us having to try and get in through the back door.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a brilliant theory of change, and I'm all for it. I think it's just a tragic failure of the law that people have to put themselves at risk of imprisonment just to get a cruelty case into court. Where you're supposed to have cruelty laws and they're not protecting these animals in any way whatsoever, but they are laws. And the only way people can actually have the courts address what is illegal cruelty is to put themselves at risk. I think it's a tragic misuse of the law.
A lot of these laws don't cover animals we eat.
But in California, they do.
That's therein lies the...
In New York, they do. In plenty of states, they do. And nothing is any better in those states than in states. Even in states where they don't cover don't get me started. Even in states
start.
It's just like they make exemptions for customary farming practices. A lot of what they don't want to go into court and argue that what they're doing to these chickens, that they're all diseased and like they don't want to argue that that's customary. Like there are definitely holes there. Even though it is customary, they would have a very hard time making that public. So there are holes in the law, but there's just no way to get them into court other than for passionate people to risk their own freedom. And I just think it's a tragedy.
And even then, it's hard to get into court because, we had one of our activists in Iowa who did a brilliant investigation on pigs. And on the morning of his trial, they pulled it. And, it was very disappointing. One of the interesting things in court that Wayne noted about our trial was that normally it's the prosecution trying to get all the information in and the defense trying to keep everything out. But for us, it was us trying to get everything in. Yeah. And we both testified on our own behalf, which is not common among defendants. And the prosecution trying to get everything out. Don't show the videotape. Alicia and I had seen a videotape of extreme cruelty, not killing, not the slaughter, but outside of the normal slaughter at this slaughterhouse. animals being boiled alive, buried alive, and we weren't allowed to get that video in. We weren't allowed to get Hadar Avram's letter in. And all those things made the jury go, what are they hiding?
Yeah.
And so that's why I just want to reiterate, transparency is crucial. And setting up all activists out there listening who want to make a change, you've got to think, okay, if this goes to court, what do I need to do? And one of the things you need to do is you need to do what Alicia did, which is get a necropsy. What Alicia did also, which is reach out to all sorts of county and federal and animal legal agencies beforehand saying this is cruel.
Absolutely.
Before you do your action.
I mean, the first advice you will get from any lawyer on any case, anything, not just this, but any case, is document everything. Everything you do, you write it down because you're not going to remember it. Everything you do, everything that gets said to you, everything that you can possibly document, write it down. And then you are so much more likely to be able to get something into court.
Right. So we have to just keep challenging, keep pushing, and there will be a judge. There will be a judge and a jury who allows the necessity defense, and the jury acquits based on the necessity.
It's an obviously applicable defense. It's just outrageous. But I can't keep going on and on about it. I just couldn't be more grateful to you for what you've done and for coming on and telling us about it. It's just really, I'm so inspired. Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us on, Marianne.
Social media has become such an important part of almost all of our lives. So please make our hen house part of that social media experience for you. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram. We try to post some news stories to help you keep up to date on what's happening in the world for animals. You can also find us online, of course, on our website, ourhenhouse.org, or you can email us. If you have some concerns or questions or something you'd like us to discuss on the podcast, let us know. info@ourhenhouse.org. Anxieties are rising. Our first story is, as promised earlier in the program, from Drovers, a meat industry website. A girl, a goat, and the law. The Shasta County, California boondoggle. Now, interestingly, they are not supporting what happened here at all. They're horrified. They know this was bad. And they're trying to pretend like this isn't, what happened to this little girl and her goat does not represent the meat industry. This is one by one Greg Henderson. It is entirely possible, he says, the Shasta County, California Sheriff's Office and the Shasta District Fair have tarnished your image as a food producer more than any radical animal rights group. Well, I guess that's possible, but until yesterday, was anybody horrified at the idea that children were upset when their 4-H animals were killed? I've never heard of that. So he talks about, the story about Cedar the goat, and his problem is that grown-ups couldn't figure out how to bend the rules enough so it didn't end up written as a tragedy in the New York Times. And he's referring to the Nicholas Kristof column that we spoke about earlier. That's his real problem here. Not that the rules should be changed, not that there's something wrong with the rules, but they should have bent them here. And the problem is not that Cedar ended up dead or not that the child was upset, but that it got written up in the New York Times. And, that's exactly what their problem is. He thinks that, I love this line, the only winner in this public relations debacle is Advancing Law for Animals, a nonprofit law firm specializing in complex, novel issues of animal law. Wow, they should put that on their website. That's a great description. He's also, a little worried about the unbelievable national press coverage that it got in the Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Apparently it's been on TV too. I have not seen those pieces. And, he tells the story of how, the goat was purchased, but then kind of long distance. So they just didn't turn the goat in and remove them from the fair. And as a fugitive from justice, he says, Cedar was taken to a hideout in far-off Sonoma County. Before doing so, she, that's the mother, told fair representatives she would reimburse Dahl, that's the buyer, the state senator, and pay for any financial hit caused by the decision to keep him. And, what he thinks is that this should have been the point where reasoned adults might bend the rules for a little girl and her pet goat. Don't need to change the rules, just need to recognize, apparently, that this is going to be a problem and bend them. And, he tells the whole story, which you're probably all familiar with, or you will be, once I cover it, hopefully on the Animal Law Podcast.
And the fair contacted the Shasta County Sheriff, who promptly dispatched deputies to apprehend the fugitive goat. This whole hot mess is headed to court. And, if they think the coverage is bad now, he's right. The coverage is just going to get worse. Boy, he gets really harsh. Boy, when they turn on each other, they really turn on each other. More important for livestock producers is how the Shasta County Fair and the Shasta County Sheriff, both unencumbered by intelligence, created a bonanza for animal rights zealots. Like, why? I mean, he seems to agree with the animal rights people here. So what makes them zealots? I don't know. Then he goes through all these comments that were made on the articles. That's not that interesting. Seizing on the opportunity, Advancing Law for Animals is representing the mother and daughter in pending lawsuits. Whether they prevail in court is likely secondary for the legal team, who will relish the chance to argue for animal rights in open court and the press coverage the case is sure to attract. Well, I'm sure they will be thrilled with the chance to make this argument. I'm not sure it's an animal rights argument, but, it certainly has some related to animals. So I'm not sure how they will argue it. Probably will have to do with the trauma suffered by the child. And, I'm sure they're looking forward to the press coverage. But I beg to differ. I doubt whether that's secondary for whether they prevail. I've never met a lawyer who didn't want to win. And I would really, really, really want to win this one if I was arguing it. All right. Scorecards and incremental changes. How extremists are targeting consumer choice. This is from Drovers and by one Abby Cornegay. And she starts off by saying, any company involved in the production, processing is definitely the new word for slaughtering. Like, they just do not use slaughter anymore. They use sometimes I don't even know what they're talking about when they keep talking about processing and the plant and whatever. They're talking about slaughterhouses. Any company involved in the production, processing, and retailing of dairy, meat, poultry, eggs, and seafood has at least one thing in common: the potential to be targeted by extreme animal rights organizations. Yep, she's absolutely right. One of the things that she thinks is really of primary concern to any consumer-facing food brand are pressure campaigns and pushing for quote-unquote incremental changes under the guise of concern for animal welfare. And her point is that, they want to get rid of animal agriculture completely, and they're just pretending to care about animal welfare. That's not true. I mean, there are some organizations probably that, are really not looking for the end of animal agriculture at all. Like, don't even have that as a distant, dream goal. They're just looking to improve welfare. There are a lot of organizations for whom that is a dream goal and a legitimate goal and would like that. And think of animal welfare as a stepping stone to that. That doesn't mean they don't care about animal welfare. That doesn't mean they don't care about the things that they're fighting for. I think most people in this biz would like to see animals in a higher circle of hell, if that is possible. If that's all you can get, that is worth fighting for, because, how much they suffer matters. But it also matters, whether that higher circle of hell can lead to maybe getting them out of hell completely. But all right, I'm going on and on and on. Let me get back to the article. A small but loud group of animal rights extremists and vegan activists are working hard to eliminate choice. They are doing so by implying intense pressure to restaurant, retail, and food service brands. Now, her whole point here is that these animal rights groups are small, and they're really, for some reason, going to be able, they don't have a lot of support, it's just a few people, but they're going to be able to pressure supermarkets into doing what they want. This is always the kind of argument they make, but how are they going to do that if they don't represent anybody? I mean, supermarkets aren't idiots. So she hates these scorecards. She hates this pushing for incremental changes. Apparently, she doesn't think there needs to be any changes. Examples of scorecards within the pork community include the Quit Stalling report. That's cute. I mean, if you can be cute when you're talking about gestation crates, focused on eliminating the use of gestation stalls. And the first step in their incremental approach was to change specific production practices. Now, these groups are demanding more quote-unquote plant-based menu options as part of their rankings. Oh my God, what an outrage.